Shabbat Shalom. Good morning, everyone. I'm Rabbi Jenny Greenspan for Congregation Beth-El Zedek here in Indianapolis, Indiana. And we will take a moment while we gather to get started on this first Shabbat of 2021, just January 2nd. So a Shabbat Shalom and still a Happy New Year. We'll gather as always. If you would like to receive a PDF of our Torah portion to read along with me, it is on our website. Just going to go to beez613.org and click on the worship and then virtual Shabbat resources and scroll down next to Torah Talk. There's a link for Etz Chaim, for our Chumash that we use in the building and online even still. If you have a physical copy of the Etz Chaim, you can also grab that as well. And for now, let's say Shabbat Shalom and good morning to those who are saying that they're here. Shabbat Shalom, good morning to Alex Binder, to Jim Roth, good to see you every week. Shabbat Shalom to the Seagulls, to Phyllis Luber, to Renee Fouch. Shabbat Shalom, Boker Tov. And Shabbat Shalom and Happy New Year to Alan Hamburger and everyone else who's joining us, even if you're not commenting in, that is fine. I know some don't on Shabbat, so absolutely fine. But Shabbat Shalom, even if you are not writing in Shabbat Shalom to Michael Kahn. So good to see everybody. So as I said, we have the PDF of our Torah portion this morning available on our website. Beez613.org, or in a physical Etz Chaim, or really a physical Chumash, any Chumash that you might want to look at. Good morning, Marty Lip. Shabbat Shalom. It's good to see you last night on, and good to see you again this morning. If you are using an Etz Chaim, I'm going to be beginning on page 307 today, so a little bit further down in the Torah portion than I often do. Often something grabs me at the very beginning and we're good, but this week, a lot happens in this portion, but I really wanted to focus on this final chapter because our Torah portion today is Vayechi, which is the final chapter of the book of Bereshit, the book of Genesis. So if you are following in an Etz Chaim, I'm on page 307, whether you're using the PDF or the physical copy. If you are using a different edition of the Chumash, I am in Genesis chapter 50. And I'm going to start by looking, we're going to do a quick cursory glance at the beginning of the chapter and then move forward. So I will be starting with chapter 50, verse 5, and then we're going to go to the last few verses of our Torah portion. And Shabbat Shalom, good morning to Cheryl too. Good to see everyone. Happy New Year. And so let us go ahead and get started with this week's Torah portion. This week's Torah portion, as I said, Vayechi, is the final Torah portion of the book of Bereshit, the book of Genesis, and it is carries the death of both Jacob, our third of our three forefathers, and his most known son, Joseph. He has 12 sons in all, but these are the two deaths that are recorded in this particular Torah portion. Much of the earlier bits take focus on Jacob's death. He gives a sort of a blessing, sort of a wish and expectation for each of his children and grandchildren. He gives the verse that we still use to bless many of our sons today. Yisimcha Elohim ke'Ephraim v'chi Menashe. May you be like Ephraim and Menashe, which he says to Ephraim and Menashe. So in truth, the blessing for our sons is that they be the best version of themselves, and we can reflect that for our daughters and other children as well. That is much of the Torah portion. And then here at the beginning of chapter 50 is Jacob's death and burial. So much of the parsha is about his dying, and now he has passed. And we see his children, his sons primarily, figuring out how to care for their father's body. Before he passed, Jacob requested that his body be returned to the land of Canaan. He came down to Egypt in last week's Torah portion. He'd like to be returned to the land of Canaan and buried in the cave of Machpelah, where his father and mother and grandfather and grandmother were all buried, and where his wife Leah is to be buried, though Rachel, his younger wife, was not buried in the cave of Machpelah, but he wants to be buried with his family. Which I think is true for many people. Many of us have spots that are attached to our history and to our family, and Jacob wants to be returned. to the land of Canaan to be buried with his family. And so in Genesis chapter 50, verse 5, on page 307, we see Joseph approaching Pharaoh to say that this was Jacob's request. He says, "My father made me swear, saying, I am about to die. Be sure to bury me in the grave which I made ready for myself in the land of Canaan. Now therefore let me go and bury my father. Then I shall return." And Pharaoh said, "Go up and bury your father as he made you promise an oath." The next several verses we see Joseph and his brothers gathering their entire family, and they all make a pilgrimage up to the land of Canaan to bury their father, something that for many of us we've also experienced, traveling to the place where someone is to be buried to say goodbye. And so if we jump to verse 13, his sons carried him to the land of Canaan, and they buried him in the cave of the field of Machpelah, near the field of Mamre, which Abraham had bought for a burial site from Ephron the Hittite, referencing all the way back to Torah portion Chaye Sarah. After burying his father, Joseph returned to Egypt, he and his brothers and all who had gone up with him to bury his father. Now here's where I want to take our biggest focus, because this is seeing this moment, watching all of the brothers take Jacob's body back to the cave of Machpelah for his burial. We now come to Joseph's death at the end of the same chapter. I want to look at the last 3 verses of the entire book of Genesis. Chapter 50, verse 24 through 26. At length, Joseph said to his brothers, "I am about to die. God will surely take notice of you and bring you up from this land to the land that he promised an oath to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob." So Joseph made the sons of Israel swear, saying, "When God has taken notice of you, you shall carry my bones from here." And Joseph died at the age of 110 years, and he was embalmed and placed in a coffin in Egypt. The question that arises for me and for many commentators in this is, why does Joseph, "Vayishba Yosef et bnei Yisrael lemor, pakod yifkod Elohim etchem, v'halitem et atmotai mizeh." At some point in the future, Joseph is saying to the children of Israel, God at some point in the future will take note of you and take note of God's promise to your people and bring you up back to your land, the land of Israel, the land of Canaan. Take my bones with you then. So the question becomes, why, if Pharaoh had no problem whatsoever with Joseph and his brothers taking Jacob's body to the land of Canaan immediately following his death to bury him, why does Joseph say that I'm going to be held in a coffin in Egypt for a while, and eventually, when everyone returns to the land of Egypt, eventually when God takes note of you as a people, then take me back, take my bones back. He recognizes it's going to be a long enough time that all that will remain of him is bones. And he says the bones should go back at this point in the future. So the question becomes, why didn't Joseph just tell Pharaoh that he was going to expect that his brothers or his children would do this for him? Why instead do Joseph's bones get left in Egypt for a while to be brought back later? There's the Torah Talk has a somewhat practical answer that actually also makes me think of the recent passing of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Zichronah Livracha, is that he says that Joseph was too much of a dignitary in the land of Egypt, that the Egyptians needed to be able to see him laying in the casket to be there for a time, just as the American people as a whole and not the Jewish people needed the time upon the passing of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So in some ways, maybe the Torah Talk is saying just a very practical answer, but I think that there may be a deeper one that I want to take a look at, which we will actually come back to in a few weeks in Exodus chapter 13, verse 19, when Moses, now the leader of the Israelite people, circles back to this promise that was made. Moses took with him the bones of Joseph, who had exacted an oath from the children of Israel, saying, "God will be sure to take notice of you, and then you shall carry my bones from here with you." That Moses, the later leader, is the one who will do it. Rashi on that verse says that it had to do with a communal responsibility. Joseph made the community promise this. A communal responsibility ends up falling to the leader to make sure that it is done. And so Moses does. There are legends about how he even found the bones again where the coffin must have been kept. If the next Pharaoh forgets who Joseph was and everything that he did, then was it so obvious where Joseph was being held in Egypt? There are legends of a somewhat miraculous young woman named Sarah Bat Asher, which I'll come back to in a few weeks probably, who is a woman who is, the legend says she never quite dies. She comes up a couple of times in the Torah and always seems to be alive at different points throughout the Torah. So there's a midrash, a legend that says that Sarah Bat Asher is how Moses knew where to find Joseph. But the point that I really want to come to is that Moses ends up carrying this coffin of Joseph's bones with the ark. In the Talmud in Masechet Sota on chapter 13 says that all of the years that the Jewish people were in the wilderness, there were two aronot, two arks. One was the ark that we are most familiar with, that carried the Ten Commandments, that carried the tablets from Mount Sinai and carried the divine presence. And then the Talmud is saying there was another aron, another ark. In Hebrew, we use the same word for the ark, the holy space where we hold the things most holy to us, and for a coffin, which I think is a very important parallel, that the coffin also carries one of the holy and the most important things to us in that it holds our loved ones whom we've lost. And the Talmud says that the whole time we have the image of the entire people of Israel surrounding the ark, and the Talmud says that there were really two arks. There were two aronot there. One was the aron of the commandments, and the other was this coffin of Joseph. It carried Joseph's bones. Joseph, who despite his years in Egypt, still remained very connected to his history, and who marked the history of this people and the way that they came into Egypt and leave in their journey toward freedom. And in some ways, to me, it feels like that means that they also carried their entire legacy. They carried their history. For them wandering in Israel, the Torah was not yet their history, it was their future. It was what they were heading to. They're walking through the desert, heading to the land of Israel, setting up to be a people, no longer an enslaved nation, but rather their own nation with their own integrity and their own self-determination and leadership. And so the ark of the commandments becomes their symbol of the future that they are heading to, and then they are also carrying the bones of Joseph, the reminder of where they have come from. They carry their history. So perhaps the reason that Joseph is not immediately upon his death taken back to Canaan to be buried by his brothers is that he has a sense that the future generation will need him, because they will need to be able to learn to hold both. They need to learn to hold both their hope for their future, their new determinations, their new goals, and to hold on to their history and to their legacy. That they will need to hold his bones as a symbol of the past so that they have a purpose to go forward into their future. So this week, as we end the book of Genesis, we close the chapter of our entire Torah, that is the creation of the entire earth, narrowing to the creation of human being and Noah, narrowing to this one family that becomes an entire people next week when we begin the book of Exodus. So we kind of narrow in and move back out. And by carrying Joseph's bones in the future, we hold on to the past, to the legacy, and to the connection and the simplicity of just one family with all of their joys and all of their turmoils, which we have seen throughout the book of Genesis. So I hope as we move forward into 2021 on this New Year's Day, we also find that way to do both, that we find that way to hold and carry the Ark of our covenant, our hopes for the future, our goals, our expectations, and our purposes, and at the same time carry the ark of our past and of our legacy, and that we hold on to both together. And say Shabbat Shalom. I hope we all have a wonderful week ahead, and that we are all indeed blessed with a happy new year, with a healthy new year, and a healthy start to the book of Exodus in just 1 week. Say Shabbat Shalom and welcome to Jody Zucker. Never too late. You can always start the video from the beginning again if you need. So good to see everyone, and I look forward to having you join us on the Bima. We will be starting at 10 o'clock on our live stream, so just go to the Beth-El webpage. I think we're in the sanctuary today, but just look for which one says that we are live. So Shabbat Shalom also to Maria Simon and Julia Whitehead. So good to see you too. So Shabbat Shalom, and I will see you soon.